Sweet. Okay, let me share my screen and we'll get started. See. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, I can see it.
Yes.
Yep.
Perfect. All right. So hello everybody. My name is David Neal, and Fernando will also be joining me in leading a resume workshop for tonight. Typically this would be done in person. However, given the current circumstances, we can make have, which is online. So as you guys may know, a lot of you guys are freshmen, sophomores who are just kind of getting acclimated to the CM major. But one of the problems that you'll encounter is, how do I market myself? It's kind of interesting because as a CM major, you're kind of half software engineering and half design oriented. So a lot of recruiters either don't know how to understand that or don't know whether or not you'll be suited towards software engineering or UX UI, that sort of thing. And so this whole presentation and whatnot is going to be focused on kind of figuring all that out. So yeah, how do I craft a resume? So questions you may have, how do I explain my major? Do I need a portfolio? How do I structure my resume efficiently? What should I put on my resume? How long it should be? And then how do I talk about my resume to recruiters? Those will be answered in the current presentation. So step one, be able to define yourself. And that's kind of difficult given our current major, or just our major in general and how it works. Although, we're kind of naturally in this in-between area, I think it's really important to kind of pick whether or not you're going to be more technical based or more design oriented. And, that's going to be super important when you're talking to recruiters. Are you going to be a software engineer, full stack, front end, back end? Are you going to be UX UI designer, game developer? You need to have that in mind whenever you're crafting your resume because, if you come in with just a resume that's all over the place, I've got design skills, I've got software engineering skills. Most of the time, they're not going to know where to put you. So the more specific you can be on your resume, the better. And that, requires defining yourself as a person. So some of the things, that we'll put on your resume that are pretty common, obviously your name and contact info, education, whether or not you're an undergrad. If you're a freshman, you can put your high school statistics simply because you don't have too much on your resume to begin with. Most of the time you're lacking work experiences and projects, so it's best to keep your resume robust in as many ways as possible. And I'll kind of go through all these in a sample resume in just a second. So some other things that you can put on your resume, obviously volunteer experience, research. If you're in a VIP, if you're conducting research with a professor, you can put that on there. And that comes with, publications and certifications and whatnot. If you're like, if you're Maya certified, Blender certified, those are some certifications that you can put down that might be super helpful. And just overall interest. Some recruiters like to know that you're human. That's kind of a rare quality at tech sometimes. So yeah, let's get into section specifics. And let's see. Let me pull up my resume from last year. So some section specifics. In this example, I'll kind of go over my past resume that I used to get a full stack internship. Although some of you guys will be more design oriented and focusing on UX and UI design, I'll also go over what you need to be able to succeed in that as well, with like a portfolio and how to structure your portfolio. But yeah, let me get straight into this. I wish I could pull up both these at the same time. Give me 1 second. Cool. So yeah, what does it need to have? If the example is, you're trying to get a full stack software engineering job, how do I structure my resume? So first off, you need to have a full stack language stack, essentially. You need to have backend languages, front end languages, and then middleware languages. So things like JavaScript, C, C++, Java for backend, Python scripting for scripting capabilities, all that kind of stuff. And then on top of that, what you want to do with that is not only do you want to list those things, but you also, all the languages that you list as proficient and whatnot, you want to back that up with projects, and you can kind of see right below it, I have a project that essentially covers every language that I have except for C++. But C++, C, they're kind of similar. But anyways, you see what I mean. So, and another thing that we kind of want to highlight is how you kind of describe each of your accomplishments in your resume. Let's pull up the presentation again. I wish I could pull both these up at the same time. So obviously your resume needs to be nice and readable, but not only do you need to have nice and readable text, but you also need to have concise and very efficient wording. And Google is very famous for kind of giving candidates hints as to how they want resumes structured. And so a lot of big companies kind of also follow that example. And so whenever you're describing your projects or your job experiences, you want to be efficient, and you want to say, I did X so I could achieve Y because of overarching goal Z. And I can give an example of this right now. Like, let's say you created some algorithm. I used X data structure or X trick to accomplish or improve the efficiency of this overall system by this metric so that I could do this overall. Yeah, and if you do that, it's really easy to read your resume and really easy to kind of get an idea of what you've done overall, as opposed to, having to kind of sift through a bunch of heavy wording. So it's really important to be concise. Some other things that could be super useful, bolding keywords, such as, for example, DFS, BFS, Dijkstra's, A-star, all these pathfinding algorithms. All of those could be highlighted, as well as, object-oriented programming. That could be highlighted or bolded. Although you don't want to use too much bold, simply because you don't want to overwhelm the reader with a bunch of bold, but use it tastefully. If you use it tastefully, it kind of points out a lot of keywords to recruiters. And keep in mind, a lot of the times, it's not going to be software engineers reading your resumes to start. It's going to be a recruiter who doesn't necessarily have technical background. So a lot of times they're just looking for keywords. So bolding those keywords is really helpful. But yeah, let's go back to the presentation. Any questions so far? I'm kind of going through this pretty fast, and feel free to interrupt me at any point. I think last time we did this, it was kind of, we answered questions on the go, and all the upperclassmen and whatnot were able to give their opinions on, or their advice on the questions that were asked, which is super helpful. So you get a bunch of different perspectives on how to solve different things. Any questions so far? while I'm waiting on that, I can kind of go over different ways you can actually craft a resume. I personally just I don't have time to use Illustrator or InDesign to create a resume. So I just use a resume template online. There's plenty of free resume templates online that look really pretty and are easy to use and whatnot. Um, so if you're kind of lazy when it comes to that kind of stuff, I would suggest doing that kind of thing. Uh, what what if you don't have work experience or many personal projects, but instead soft skills? So yeah, if you don't have work experience or personal projects, I definitely suggest, going back to, some of the things that you did in high school. I know that a lot of people do high schools, like volunteering stuff, clubs, interests. You could do that. You could also, in addition to languages and whatnot, list off technologies that you know, such as like Microsoft Word, Illustrator, Photoshop, Maya, et cetera, Excel. Um, those are some things that you could put on there. Um, but yeah, if you don't have too much work experience, I definitely would kind of rely on some of the stuff that you did in high school to kind of fill up your resume a bit, and that should help a bit. Does that answer your question? Does high school stuff put you at a disadvantage? That's a good question. Um, if you're a freshman, it does not. It does not. Um, a lot of times recruiters kind of have an idea if you're a freshman, and they usually give if you're a third year, if you're a third year. Now, if you're a third year, um, if you're a third year at tech, I would be shocked if you didn't have class projects. All my personal projects are stuff that I did in class, except for another thing that I did, but that's kind of besides the point. Um, so personal project as a third year, you should definitely have personal projects. Any project that you did in class, if you're able to explain it in a way that's relevant to your job description, that's super useful. I wouldn't discredit the stuff that you do in class. Now, if you're a freshman, that's a different story. As a freshman, you don't have those class projects to be able to put on your resume. So in that case, just put your high school stuff. A lot of times, recruiters don't necessarily uh, kind of go hard on freshmen. They're really understanding of the fact that they don't have work experience and they don't have personal projects to put on their resume. So they're just looking for a lot of times they're just looking for work ethic and potential. So yeah, I wouldn't worry too much if you're a freshman. But if you're a third year, I definitely think you have personal projects put in your resume. How deep should personal projects be? At least how many are suggested? Um, it depends on your position, right? If I'm full stack, obviously I want to have a project for each language that I know. Um, if you're back end, maybe a few. I'd say at least three, two or three, depending on your. If you have a lot of work experience, you could get away with two. But for the most part, I'd say average, you should have at least three projects. Um, I'm a second year transfer student where my first year I just got knocked out of basic gen ed classes. So yours is kind of interesting. Um, if you're a second year transfer, you also may be able to you also may be able to get away with high school stuff. And if you're a second year as well, I know it's kind of a difficult time to do this sort of thing, but if you don't have projects or if you're waiting on big projects for classes, I'd go ahead and actually try to join some clubs where you do some cool things. There's like a robotics club. I know there's a wide variety of clubs that are still continuing on online and whatnot. So if you don't have any class projects, I'd kind of reach out to some clubs and see if you could get involved there. and that'll help boost your resume in that regard. Um,
Yeah, and can I add something onto that as well?
yeah.
So if you don't have any personal projects, I would say that a good starter project could be like creating your own like personal website. Like it can just be like a static HTML, CSS, and like it's really simple to do. Um, you can go on Code Academy for intro tutorials on HTML and CSS. Like you can honestly have fun with that, and that's like a really good first personal project. It's actually like how I got my first internship um like 2 years ago or last summer. So like they liked seeing that project. And I would say another really easy project could be doing a Twitter bot. There are
Hmm.
tutorials online for that as well. Like I did that for one of my classes, but like I also made another Twitter bot like a year later, and like an online tutorial helped me a lot with that too. So just like look up things online to get you started as well. And yeah,
Um,
W3 schools is also really good.
yeah, I definitely agree with that. Yeah, and you can also work it into, a lot of at least design-oriented positions. Um, a lot of your portfolios have to be on a website,
Hmm.
and access on a website. So if create a website in such a way that shows that you're a competent designer that works to your advantage. So that's definitely a really good project, whether or not you're a UX UI designer or a software engineer.
Hmm.
What do you put on your personal website? Anything. Most of the time, it usually consists of, your portfolio. That's the biggest part usually. Your portfolio, if you're, UX UI designer, um, requires a lot of work. I'm not gonna lie. Um, so that'll be the bulk of it if you're a UX UI designer. If you're a software engineer, it'll most likely it could revolve around your personal projects. It could be similar to a portfolio, but not as robust, and it could also contain your resume and whatnot.
Hmm.
Those are things that I put on my website. Uh, how does the distinction between year at tech versus classification by credit impact internship opportunities? It doesn't. It doesn't. Unless you're a freshman. Freshmen are kind of the the exception. A lot of times freshmen can kind of get away with not having too much experience. Um, so they kind of have an easier time. Uh, not I wouldn't say an easier time. They just don't have the expectations that other years have. But if you're a second year, third year, fourth year, et cetera, unless you're applying for a full-time job, they expect the same thing. They expect the same thing from you, and the internship opportunities are essentially equal regardless of like your first or second, third, or fourth year, I'd say. Um, what if you did a project but lost all the data slash records of it? Can you still put it? It depends. Are you putting it on a resume or are you putting it on a portfolio? Because those are two vastly different questions, or scenarios. If it's on a resume, that's totally fine. Unless, well, yeah, no, I'd say it's totally fine. Even with no proof, I'd say yes. If you have a thorough understanding of that project, regardless if you don't have you know, if you don't have proof of it, and you're able to talk about it with a recruiter during an interview, I think it's fine if you don't have proof. And if they ask, to just usually in some interviews they ask if you can display some of the projects that you worked on, and in that case you have the liberty to kind of choose what project you display. But as long as you're able to talk about it in detail, I think it's fine. Um, cool. So yeah, I think those are all the questions so far. Um, let's go on to like what a portfolio should look like. So yeah, if you're doing any type of creative work, UX, UI design, game development, et cetera, um, you need a portfolio. 100%. If not, you have virtually zero chance of, well, not virtually, but like it's your odds are against you if you don't have a portfolio. Because there are candidates who do have portfolios, and you know the portfolio by itself is just is proof that you're able to do a job correctly in like a design oriented gig. So it's definitely very important that you have it. So um, one of the things that you need to be able to do is have a portfolio ready at the career fair. Obviously, the career fair is going to be online this time around, I think, in some fashion. Uh, I don't know how that's going to work. Well, I'd say just have your link available maybe if you put it on a website. Actually, yeah, I would say put your portfolio on a website in that case. It is really important now, simply because of that. How do I create a portfolio? And then what goes into it? We can kind of get into that. So how do I create one? You can use I used Wix or WordPress to create a website and kind of showcase my projects that way. I know some people like to use InDesign and Illustrator to showcase their projects. Um, if it's on a website, I definitely suggest doing it through code or through WordPress, just because you'll have an easier time, I think. Um, yeah, let's get into what a resume looks like and whatnot. Yeah, I'm gonna use Chandler's resume. Chandler graduated, but his portfolio is pretty dope. So let's see. So this is his website. Obviously, it looks beautiful since he's a designer. Let's get into it. Oh yeah, the first thing that you see, portfolio. Make that super readily available for people to see. That should be the first thing that people can click on because that's literally your most important thing that you have. So yeah, make that available. So yeah, as I said, portfolio is a showcasing of projects, and not only a showcasing but a detailed showcasing. Each individual project has the design process uh, and is organized in a very efficient fashion. It usually starts. It's usually organized, based on early development, midway development, and then final results and whatnot. Yeah, I can go ahead and share this resume for reference. Um, or actually, let me go back and then there we go. Cool. So yeah, as you can see, he has an overview of the project as a whole, and then he has the overall goals, and then the design process. Uh, it's low fidelity prototypes, mid fidelity, and then final designs and high fidelity prototypes and whatnot. Uh, and you can just use this type of structure throughout all your projects, I'd say. Um, it's super important to have all of this be super neat and super easy to read. One, because you're going into a design-oriented job, so that's part of the job. You should be able to showcase these types of things in a very beautiful and efficient fashion. But two, um, it's important, for recruiters or other UX designers who are looking at your portfolio to be able to get an idea of your design process and how you think about design and how you approach design. Um, and those are kind of displayed through, your goals, obviously, and then your steps to creation. So any questions about portfolios so far? You can kind of just use this type of mock-up. Is it looked down upon if you use website creators like Wix, Weebly versus building a website from code? I wouldn't say so. Um, I mean, if you're a software engineer and you don't have too many projects on your resume, uh, then maybe you should use HTML and CSS simply because you can now use it as a project itself. But if you've already got projects and whatnot, it's not looked down upon. I use Wix and Weebly and WordPress, and I didn't get any flack for it. So yeah, it's not looked down upon at all. Any more questions? All right. In that case, we can kind of just open the floor to questions just about anything, essentially. How to talk to recruiters about your resume, interview experiences, how to prepare for interviews, all that sort of stuff. Um, and if you ask those things, I'm pretty sure anybody who's an upperclassman or who's had internship experience could be able to talk to you about it right now.
Hey, David. Uh,
Yes.
do you have a second? So, could I take over for just a sec,
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
you
Go
don't mind?
ahead.
Cool. So, hi guys, I'm Stephanie, and I asked Fernanda if I could be here, so I'm kind of jumping into your session today. But I am a grad student here at Tech. I was a computational media major as an undergrad, and I wanted to join in and maybe throw in my 2 cents about everything. Let me share my screen. Can I
Oh,
take
yeah,
over sharing screen? Do you mind?
yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Um, let's see. If I share my screen like this, can y'all like read what's on it or is it blurry?
I can read it.
Sick. Okay.
Yeah, we can read
So,
it.
yes. Okay. So this is my portfolio from like not my portfolio. This is my resume from 3 years ago in January. I was a sophomore. I had had one previous job. It was it was a co-op. I did one rotation and realized I hated it and left it. So you can see I have education. I have a ton of education on here. It's actually kind of absurd. Um, and then I have work experience. I was doing. I At the end of my first year, I realized I didn't have a lot of like personal coding experience. So I tried to join a lab and volunteer some time, and I got paid by the hour with like sophomore undergrad research rates, but doing front end development. And then I had my other experience. I also have like computer and languages here, and then I had leadership activities. And this is what my resume looked like when I was a sophomore. Um, this is my junior resume, which obviously is starting to look a little bit nicer. Um, Education is smaller, computer skills are at the top, work experience and teaching experience. But it's so wordy. It's so painfully wordy. I have an issue with being verbose.
I do
But
too.
yeah, I know. I had more work experience here, and I was trying to showcase my computer skills. You can tell the design here is a little lacking, though. Also, big mistake of mine. I have 2 pages. I I remember showing my resume to people with this 2 page resume, and like you can do it, but like no one really looked at this page. Like they would flip to it out of almost respect for me, and then be like, okay, I've seen everything I need to see. So I would recommend the 1 page route just because it's possible to condense. I didn't need 3 bullet points here. I didn't need 3 bullet points here. Less is more. Um, this is my resume after I got into grad school. And this resume is a UX resume. This is like a common engineering resume, which I've heard it be called, versus UX, which is the 2-column resume. If you want to get into user experience, generally this is what you would see, and like that's what David had, which I assume like there's definitely some overlap with like
Mm-hmm.
what's the term with full stack development, where it also makes so much more space. Like now I could fit work experience, teaching experience, leadership experience. I could fit all of that on 1 page and have my educations, and skills was a new one here, like really highlighting my design skills. and then adding a project section because I was doing UX, but I didn't have any UX experience. So I was compensating for that by talking about projects I had done in classes. And now my final resume, which I finally have put into like Illustrator and gotten done there, is like hopefully becoming more concise. It still looks really verbose. I need to fix it, but it's still got like those UX projects, the work experience. My skills section has really grown. I've seen a lot of people like add in, like for example, if you work on games that get published, have that as a section. If you have awards, put that as a section. Like those things will help you stand out. Um, but part of the reason that I wanted to show you guys a bunch of my resumes today was that like it's okay if you have a resume that looks like this. Like it's one of those things that's constantly changing, and if you sit here worrying about whether or not like it's good enough and you never send in a resume because you know it can look like this but doesn't yet, like it's okay. Send it in, make like shoot your shot essentially. Um, I can also briefly show you guys my portfolio, which again, UX research focused because I want to be a researcher. So there's a lot like this is Squarespace. You can use Wix or Squarespace or anything else, but making a portfolio is a lot of work. So depending on what you want to focus your portfolio on, I would. I think that for people that are still learning, it's great to have a variety of different projects and a variety of experience. But you want the stuff that people are going to click on first to be like front and center. So like these two projects are featured on my resume, and this is like my work experience from this summer. I want them to be like readily available, easy to find, easy to click on. This is one piece I did when I was at work this past summer. We were talking about portfolios. My coworkers were talking about the money shot sandwich, which is having a really cool picture of your work right at the top that draws people in, and then having all of your content, and then having another money shot at the bottom of your work. So like for me, that money shot is the top page that has like all of that really cool visual that's a Photoshop template. And then my second money shot is like I have the completed thing here that you can like step through and like experience our final design here. Um, but yeah, like making a portfolio is not easy. It was far harder than making a resume, and you need to commit time to it to really make it the quality that you want it to be. But the results are so worth it. Like actually being able to have this to talk about your work is great. If anybody is interested in like the UX field or like wants more information on how to build like a UX resume and portfolio, like by all means feel free to message me. I'm in the CM Slack channel, so you can go ahead and message me there if you wanted. But I've been around the block, and I would like to help the new CMs get themselves job ready. If there's any other questions y'all have for me too.
Do you mind if I hop back on for a second?
Absolutely. Do you want me to stop sharing?
No, you can keep sharing. It's fine.
Sure.
So I think one of the most important things that you can do, and it's almost one of the easiest things that you can do, depending on the route you go, is not using the GodTech resume template. It is awful. Everybody uses it, and it doesn't make you stand out whatsoever. As soon as you add in color, as soon as you add in a different format, you immediately stand out to people. Not only that, most of the time, since the GodTech resume template is so bad readability-wise, you also gain better readability overall. And with the use of like resume templates that are online, it's really easy to make. It literally took me probably an hour in total to make this entire resume that I had, and I think it looks pretty good overall. And I just used a template, so that is one of the easiest things that you can do to make yourself stand out. Another tip, is to, especially if you're a, like a second to third year, and you don't really have too much internship experience. I know I didn't have my first internship until the end of my third year. Um, is to have your personal projects and your class projects up towards the top with your languages and whatnot. They understand that, you're not going to have work experience, so they want to be able to see your personal projects first. They want to be able to see what you're going to be able to, what you've done in your classes first. Um, so that's super useful. I think one person wanted me to um, explain how to break down what CM is to recruiters. Um, so the way I describe it to recruiters is, from a high level, CM is essentially broken down into two different uh, categories of work, or two different fields. Um, Literature, media, communications, and then I'd say software engineering or computer science. Um, and typically, as soon as you say that, um, you know, they'll start to question, why don't I just take a solely LMC or CS major as opposed to you? And the way I usually describe it to people is uh, one of the most useful things that CM teaches me is how to create projects from the design process up. A lot of times in CS classes, they just give you a project that's kind of like halfway done, or it's just a partial project. You never really start a project from the ground up. Um, and I think, you know, emphasizing that as a CM student, you're able to kind of look at things from a broader standpoint and being able to um, think of use case scenarios, think of how empathize with users, and then how to just start and finish a project from the ground up. Gives you really, really relevant experience, in the corporate world. So explaining it in that manner also is super useful. And then after that, you just kind of talk about what you specialize in, if you're going to do software engineering or UX UI design, game development, etc. Does
If
that
I
make
could
sense?
throw one other thing at you with that,
Yeah.
the way that I always did the intro to the explain what CM is like every other major says, "Hi, I'm electrical engineering, blah blah blah," and like they go off talking about their interests. What I would always do is I'd be like, "Hi, my name's Stephanie. I'm a fourth year computational media major, and I assume you have no idea what that is." And usually their response is, "No, I have no idea. Tell me more about it." And like I always felt like starting it with some kind of like awareness of the small, like the small nature of the major was a good way to stand out in a way from other people, and making them engage with you and ask you questions about the major helps with like making that interaction more sociable and like stand out more compared to like a crowd of people. So also when I did it, I think that I would generally start with, oh, it's a degree that you get from working with two colleges. We have tracks here. We have tracks here that are like concentrations. And a computer scientist has two threads, being
Hmm.
people in media, where that would be a computer scientist. I do that, but with one, and then I pull one other thread from the liberal arts college, and then mash those together. That's my degree. And then I would probably start talking about my focus after that. I think, but I definitely think that starting with some kind of confident, like own it, right? Like I am part of a small major, but that's what makes me unique and special. And like making that like the main pitch of your talking to recruiters would be beneficial. I
Uh,
I
can,
do
can I?
I sorry, go ahead.
So, to kind of throw this in, um, I would advise to also be careful about how you say it, because I actually had, during an interview process, I did the exact same thing that you did, and I was like, I'm a CM major, and if you don't know what that is, and they immediately stopped me and was like, some people would not like the way you said that. Some people would not like to um, essentially immediately be assumed that they don't know what their what the current subject is or something like that. They took it as like that I was dumbing it down to them, or they thought I was just, I don't know, being disrespectful in some way. So I just be careful with how you say it. I would phrase it as, and if you're not, I would actually ask them if they're familiar with it,
I
just so
see.
you're safe. Yeah,
That's a good point. Yeah, whenever I used that pitch, it was like a career fair. And
yeah,
generally, like, I feel like that would go over better because, you're
I
trying to
agree.
have a conversation with those people. But once you're sitting down for an interview with them, they've already seen your resume. They've already presumably talked to you at least once to get in contact for it. So yeah, there is like a level of heightened understanding on the part of the person interviewing.
Yeah, so just be careful. No, I'm sorry for interrupting you.
You're totally fine. There's no right way to do this. Like you'll see a million resumes, or people see a million resumes, people see a million portfolios, and like it's so hard to define yourself and like make yourself stand out in this crowd of all of these all these students that are looking for jobs. And it's definitely it takes time to develop your brand, is what people would say. Like you can see from the ways that my resume itself has progressed, like this resume has no personality. Let's be real. Like I am just one of a million. But as you keep going, you can see that like my definition of how I present myself has changed in the way that I put myself on paper. And you can also see that a lot in the way that I've designed my resume. Like not my resume, my portfolio. Like the way the setting in which I have presented myself. Like if you look at my about page, like I'm going for a certain tone, and the like whether it be the color palette or the presentation of media or the way that you tell your story, that's unique to you in a way that you can really stand out and that you'll develop. And it's okay if you're a freshman or a sophomore and you're still figuring that out and you still have no idea. But if you move in pursuit of defining yourself for yourself a personal brand that you can showcase on these media, like your resume and your portfolio, then you'll eventually hit a point where your work really represents you, and that will make you more hireable.
Yeah, and that comes with just understanding yourself and understanding how to define yourself as a person and as a marketable person.
Yeah, and that's so hard. It takes
Yeah, it
it
is.
takes a while. Yeah, it takes time and like figuring out what you want to do too. Like I didn't know what I wanted to do until I went to grad school and
Yeah.
realized that was my focus. Whereas David, like your resume looks awesome, and you can see a lot of your personality in it too, and like how much you enjoy programming, which I did not. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I didn't know what I wanted to do until after, I would tell there was at one point I would tell different recruiters different things. I would tell some recruiters I wanted to be front end, and then I'd tell some recruiters I wanted to be full stack. So it changes. But regardless of how much it changes, just try to make it definitive and try to make it concrete, because the more concrete, the more specific, and the more definite it is, the better off you are, because recruiters are able to kind of pinpoint you into a specific role.
yeah, and it's okay to tell people that you're interested in a job that you're not sure you want. Like if somebody said, "Yeah, we're hiring full stack," and you're interested, but you're like, "Oh, I don't know if that's my focus yet." Like it's okay to say to them, like, "Yes, I am interested." Like be confident and make it seem like you make yourself marketable to those people. Like be open to trying new things, and even if you end up even if you end up getting job offers for jobs that you are like, if you don't know if you want to be a front end developer, for example, but you get an offer for a front end development job, and that's your like one offer, take it, get the experience. And I, in my fourth year, I did between my fourth year when I graduated CM and then went to grad school, I had an internship at UPS as a front end developer, and I took it and I hated it. And it was a data point for me in realizing that I was perfectly qualified for that job, but I just did not enjoy doing it. And like the thought of doing it for a long time didn't sound fun to me, and I decided to explore other things. But I'd say that was still valuable experience. It's still valuable experience to try new things and realize you don't want to do them forever. And stuff that you can use to further define your brand and or your journey from freshman computer science, computational media, LMC student to graduate.
Well, okay. Any final questions before we wrap up for today? I'll give you guys just a few seconds to write any final questions. Um, do we have a survey, Fernanda? I believe we had a survey last time.
I don't know. Dorn? Oh, she's not here.
Oh, rip.
No, we don't have a survey.
Okay, that's fine. In that case, I'm gonna take this time while people are writing their final questions to plug my own stuff for a second, because I'm going to do that. If anybody is interested in pixel art or digital art and doesn't have a long-term project that they're working on for this semester, contact me. I've got a team of 8 that is working on an online multiplayer game and single player experience that is releasing on Steam by the end of May. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, contact me. Other than that, I'm really glad for you guys to be able to come out. And one last question: is there anything you'd wish you had known before becoming a CM major? Oof, that's a very heavy question. Oh yes, yes. If there's any advice I could give for people who are trying to go into like software engineering and stuff like that, is to it's my personal opinion that the CM major does not teach enough software engineering fundamentals or computer science fundamentals. So I would suggest kind of taking the time outside of class to prepare yourself and kind of learn those things in your free time, because I believe the CM major doesn't do that properly. And I did that, and it helped me a ton, 100%. That's something I wish I'd known before coming into it, is that I was gonna have to put in extra work, but I think it's
What
worth it in the end.
what languages are you referring to? Like what experience?
Uh, just fundamental software engineering, fundamental software engineering knowledge, such as like data structures and how to utilize data structures efficiently. We have 1332 as CM majors. However, you really don't understand most of the time how to utilize those data structures and all those algorithms to their full potential until like afterwards. And I think as a CM student, it kind of ends at 1332. Object-oriented programming, you know, depends on what type of job you're looking for. If it's full stack, obviously try to have a wide variety of things. But it's all relative to the role that you want. And in any case, I believe that any outside work that you do is going to be 100% applicable. You just kind of have to use your best judgment to know what is applicable to your job role.
I would agree with everything that David said. I think that those are great points. Especially, yeah, as someone who TA'd for 1332 for 2 years, I can confirm I did not use what I learned from 1332 in subsequent classes nearly to the extent that other people did. But for me, the thing that I wish I had known, which is less about the content of what you're learning and more just, I wish that I had known or been more cognizant of that no one knows what the heck they're doing. And this is something that one of my good friends, 5th year CM, finally graduated last year, Joshua Redding, told me, is no one knows what the heck they're doing. And you look at people's resumes, you look at people's portfolios, you look at all the work they've done, and you probably think to yourself, man, everyone really has it together. Everybody knows exactly what they're doing, where they want to go, what they want to do. No, they don't. If you looked at my portfolio and my resume and you thought, man, Stephanie really knows what she's doing, I did not know what I was doing for so long. I was working as as a front end developer last year and had no idea that I wanted to be a UX researcher. And I have no idea if in 5 years I'll still be a UX researcher. I I feel like a chicken with my head cut off all the time with respect to applying for jobs and resumes and portfolios. I look at my peers and I'm like, theirs are so good. And you just remember that you are in the exact same place as everyone else, even if it doesn't feel like you are sometimes, even if they have a nice portfolio. You, by trying to get ahead of the game and by being in a meeting like this and by trying to figure out how to take that next step to make your resume better or make a portfolio, that is you already being ahead. And you are doing the work right now. You will get there. If you're a first year and you're like, how do I get to being a fourth year? How do I get to knowing what I'm doing? You won't. It's a constant state of learning, but you will get to a point where you're more confident in what you want to do and where you're going to end up. It takes time, but it is okay if you are still in that process of getting there. Thank you. I was CM president 2 years ago. I like this stuff.
Anyways, thank you guys. Sorry to cut you off, Stephanie.
No, you're fine. This is your presentation. I'm the one that jumped in just the other day. I was like, hey, Fernanda, can I come to this session?
Cool. Thank you guys so much. If you have any more questions, feel free to reach out, whether if it's about, outside of resume stuff or whatever, please feel free. I'm sure anybody in this chat would be able to help you. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah,
Also, last second announcement on behalf of CMA of our next level up session will be a Git workshop, and that's going to be on September 14th. We're not having a level up session next week because Monday is Labor Day. So enjoy your day off and hopefully come join us for our Git level up.
Woo. Okay. See you guys.
Thank you guys for putting this on. You had great attendance.
Thanks for coming.
No problem. Glad to be here.